Good evening, everybody. It is the Wildlife Center of Virginia's first ever virtual gala, and you are there for the first ever virtual video, virtual gala, virtual auction, virtual everything. I'm Ed Clark. I'm president of the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and I am so honored to welcome you here to our event this evening. We've had a series of activities going on all week and in fact all evening. A lot of folks have been here with us already for almost 2 hours checking out the programs and the introduction to various animals and people and activities at the Wildlife Center, meeting some of our former students and staff who are now working all over the world, and some of our current board members and staff members who are representing quite a diverse group of folks. But 2020 has been a challenging year, to put it very, very gently. Certainly the pandemic has thrown the world a curveball. And at the Wildlife Center, it's certainly no different. We have been challenged with the need to isolate the public from our building. We've received a 20% increase in our patient load. Why is that? We're not really sure, unless all these people working from home are finding animals and are bringing them in just for something to do. But whatever the reason, we passed the 2019 patient total on about October 1st. And 2019 was a record year for the Wildlife Center of Virginia. So we know that 2020 is going to shatter that record. But our staff has persevered, and we've only been able to do it because of folks like you, people who engage with us with your generosity, your donations, your contributions, your support, both financial and moral support. And the moral support means a lot to us as well. And so here we are. Now, tonight's activities are going to be a little different than our normal course of things. Now, we normally have a black tie event and have had for more than 30 years, where our friends and supporters and extended family get together one night a year from all over the United States and Canada. And so tonight it's a little sad not to see everybody, but knowing that all of you all are out there participating, and we know from being able to see how many people have logged in and being able to see some of the people who have logged in, a lot of friends are with us. And I want to thank you for being here. I want to welcome you. And I want you to know that your participation in this experimental virtual gala is extremely important to us. We just couldn't do anything that we do without your support. Now, as I mentioned, we've been around a long time. On Monday of next week, so 2 days from tonight, we will observe the 38th anniversary of the Wildlife Center of Virginia. 38 years. Wildlife Center was founded on November 9th, 1982, the day that the charter for the corporation was issued by the Virginia State Corporation Commission for a nonprofit corporation that at the time was called the Shenandoah Valley Wildlife Treatment and Rehabilitation Center, a name that lived in absolutely no one's memory. It was just too long. You had to stop and take a breath in the middle in order to even say the name. So about 3 years later, we changed the name to Wildlife Center of Virginia. And here we are, 38 years after that very humble start as the leading wildlife teaching and research hospital in the world. Quite honestly, we are so proud of what we've been able to do. We are so proud of the people that have come through our programs, so proud of the nearly 85,000 animals for which we've cared. And yet, none of it would be possible without the loyal support of our donors. And honestly, you are part of the team. You're part of the family. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. When you donate money to the Wildlife Center of Virginia, we don't consider it to then be our money. It's still your money. We're not your tax dollars at work. We're your charitable contributions at work. We treat your donations as sacred trust, if you will. We consider it a great responsibility to use your donations well, to use them effectively and efficiently for the advancement of our mission. And the mission of the Wildlife Center is teaching the world to care about and care for wildlife and the environment. And we have achieved a number of really great things in the last 38 years. And I have to tell you, without reservation, the best is yet to come. We have so much planned for the future that 38 years of success is just a really good warm up for what is yet to come. Now, tonight we have the silent auction, and I'll look at the clock here. I'm going to declare that the silent auction was scheduled to close at 7:40. I'm going to declare that the silent auction is going to stop and be closed in 1 minute from right now. And according to my watch, it is 7:47 Eastern Standard Time. And I know we've got folks from all over the country logged in, but you can count down 1 minute, and we're now at 50 seconds on that. And I'm going to rely on my colleagues behind the scenes to stop it in about 45 seconds. And when it's done, it's done. So if you'd like to check your bids right now is the time to do it. And because in about 35 seconds, your chance will be gone, and then we'll move into the live auction. But while you're doing that, I do want to tell you a few things about how we have coped with the wildlife needs in the midst of a human health pandemic. When we first were hit with the news in March of this year that the world was changing, life was changing as we knew it, we immediately closed our building to the public. We now have drive-in animal drop-off. We now have a program through which our patients come in from cars in the parking lot. You arrive, you text, you call, you blow the horn. Our staff will go out, retrieve the animal, bring it in, check it in, and then the life-saving work begins. But because of the pandemic, that life-saving work has had to be done for the last 6 months without the majority of our volunteers. Many of our volunteers are over 60 and in the high-risk group. Many of our staff and students, well, actually our students in particular, travel long distances away with travel restrictions. We had to essentially eliminate the international component of our training, and about one out of three of our students comes from outside the United States, which means no international travel, no international students. And even those students coming to us from across North America, they had to fly during the early days of the pandemic. We were not allowed and really did not feel safe accepting them. And that caution, that disease control protocol has paid off for us. None of our staff have, as far as we know, been exposed. No one is tested positive. Our students, when they get there, if they've come from any type of high-risk environment, have to quarantine before they begin their student training. And that caution has paid off, and maybe there's a lesson there. But the bottom line is we are persevering. We have had a record year, but we were prepared to have to do that without public support. And I just want to thank you on behalf of my colleagues, our students, our volunteers, that the support on which we count is support that has remained constant. Our loyal donors have remained loyal and been more generous this year than we had any reason to expect. Now, one of the things that we always do at the Gala is to kind of take a little look comprehensively in video format at what the Wildlife Center is all about, some of the things we are doing and have done. And this year, just because we're not together in the same room is no exception. So I'm going to ask my behind the scenes colleagues to launch the video and give you a glimpse of what's happening at the Wildlife Center of Virginia. There you go. That video was produced by one of our colleagues. Aaron Provencio is actually one of our newest staff members at the Wildlife Center. And he actually arrived after the pandemic restrictions began. So he hasn't actually worked in the Wildlife Center very much yet. He arrived from Colorado and joined our staff and started having to work from home as soon as he got here. But as the video suggested, we've had a lot of adjustments, a lot of coping to do, a lot of changes that have affected all of us. But the most important thing for us is protecting our people and our wildlife. And as you may or may not have heard, the COVID-19 pandemic has actually affected our ability to care for wildlife because certain wildlife species, and most notably bats, can contract coronaviruses. So nationwide, the rehabilitation of bat species has been suspended in most states, not because we're afraid people are going to catch coronavirus from bats, but because we're afraid people who have been exposed could pass the virus on to bats. And many of our bat species are already suffering terribly from other bat pandemics, if you will, like the white nose syndrome, a fungal infection that has really decimated many colonial bat species. And we just didn't think some of these species could tolerate one more pathogenic burden on their population numbers and their struggle to survive. So we've made do, and we have made up, and we have made it happen. Right now, the Wildlife Center is caring for 19 bear cubs. Now, many of these cubs came in when they weighed 4 or 5 pounds, and they were eating formula and just a little bit. Well, before the cooler weather has fortunately recently arrived, these bears were getting about 200 pounds of food a day. Now, that's every day, 7 days a week, 200 pounds of fresh vegetables and squash and nuts and other types of things that are all really represented in a wild bear's omnivorous diet. Now, as the cold weather has gotten here, our 19 cubs, who are some of them pretty roly-poly because they put on a lot of weight, they're slowing down as the weather cools off. We hope we're going to get enough of a winter that will inspire a real hibernation period where they go in and go to sleep in the den structures we have for them, and we don't need to feed them every day. But for the last 6 months or so, those 19 bears have put a real dent in the grocery budget, I can tell you. Now, if you're watching the screen, you see that I am joined by my colleague and dear friend, the Executive Vice President of the Wildlife Center, Randy Hua, without whom I promise you I would go crazy and wouldn't get near as much credit as he earns for me. But Randy, thanks for being here with us tonight.
My pleasure, Mr. President. Nice to see you all decked out. Now, I've got to ask, are you wearing tennis shoes or are you wearing your formal shoes tonight?
Well, I can't get my foot up this high anymore, but I will just say they are not tennis shoes, but they don't need to be polished.
Oh,
and I will leave you with that. So
that will be all we really need to know.
And that may be too much information already, right?
Probably is. Probably is.
Probably is. So in any case, for all of our participants and bidders, I want you to know that the silent auction is closed. Mm-hmm. So as you review the bids you have, if you were shown as winning about 2 minutes ago, you probably won. Unless a bid came in right at the last minute. But when they closed, they all closed at once. So it wasn't rigged. It was fair counting of all bids. So,
and
hypothetically speaking, so
we have about 12 auction items that are part of our live auction that we're going to get to in a few minutes. I understand we're having a few technical problems, which we are sorting out to try to get those live auction items back up so that we can start bidding on them. But before we do that, There's one item that you may have seen as you were going through the list, and that is item number 50, which is called the medical wish list. And let me tell you a little bit about how that list came to be. We went to Dr. Kara Pierce and said, if you look around the medical clinic, if you look at the clinic that has been treating 3,400 animals this year, what kind of new equipment do you need to help do the best job that you can to save wild lives? As is true for human medicine, there are always new developments in veterinary medicine, and some of this equipment is not inexpensive. So Dr. Kara came up with her wish list, and she did it in basically her priority order. If we needed, what are the items we need most, what's second best, what's third most, what's fourth most. So if you look at number 50, you will see that the first thing on Dr. Kara's list are reptile stacks. Well, what's a reptile stack? Reptile stack is basically a housing unit for a turtle. And the turtles that we get into the Wildlife Center of Virginia in the summer and the fall that are not ready to be released need to overwinter with us, which means that they'll be with us until the weather warms up again in about May. This year, we are overwintering about 24 turtles, and we continue to get some turtles in deeper into the fall that are dug up by dogs or hit by a car or something or other. We now have 20 of these housing units for turtles. We need to get 4 more. We found shelf space for 4 more in our reptile room. We have a separate room for housing reptiles. It has higher temperatures and higher humidity to enable them to stay active during the winter, to heal during the winter. We need 4 more of those stacks. Each stack costs about $600 a piece. We do have a challenge for tonight. One of our generous donors has said that she will buy stack number 4 if we can raise enough money to buy stacks number 1, 2, and 3. So she will give us $600 if we raise $1,800 to help us buy reptile stacks. That's item number 1. Item number 2 on the list is an oxygen concentrator, a way to concentrate the oxygen in the air that we can use with our patients. That would be particularly useful for eagles and bears. The price of that is $2,100. And again, we've got a generous donor who said that they will donate $1,000 if we can raise the rest in tonight's auction.
Now, a lot of folks recognize or would call that oxygen concentrator an oxygen generator. It's actually an item from human medicine, a therapeutic item. So if someone is suffering from emphysema or asthma or some other respiratory issue, they may have this item in their homes. And essentially what it does is it harvests oxygen from the air, concentrates it to a therapeutic level, and then delivers it to your mask or your chamber or your whatever. And it eliminates the need to have compressed oxygen bottles delivered to your home. And for us, because we keep animals in so many different locations, our hospital building is actually plumbed for oxygen in the same way that we have plumbing for water delivery to kitchens and hand washing areas and restrooms. Well, we have oxygen plumbed throughout our building. But there are times when we need to have oxygen supplied to an intensive care cage, as an example, that is not part of our regular infrastructure. So these little roll-around units are truly life-saving units, and are in the overall scheme of life, they're not cheap. But when you think about the cost compared to the lives they save, it's a very good investment for us.
That's the second item on our wish list. The third item on our wish list is called FESSA, F-E-S-S-A, which is an acronym for a French term which I will not try to pronounce. But they are basically, they are surgical bars, very small, very precise, very lightweight, that are used in surgeries, particularly in surgeries on raptors, on hawks, on owls, on eagles, to stabilize a fracture as it heals. They come in a variety of sizes and a variety of shapes. We've used them successfully for several years. And in some cases, we need to have more of size number 7. Some cases we need some new sizes. So Dr. Kara has come up with a list that totals about $500 to help us buy those extra FESA bars. And the last item on the Dr. Kara wish list was the most expensive one, and that's the fluoroscope, which has a price tag of about $12,000. And this is, and Ed can talk more about this because he's more of a medical expert than I. This is basically a real-time moving X-ray that helps our surgeons when they are working to stabilize a fracture, when they're working to remove a hook that's been embedded in a turtle or a water bird. Ed, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, essentially, I'm sure most folks have seen videos of essentially a moving X-ray. Most radiographs are static images. So if you have a broken bone, or you have something wrong with your hand, the X-ray takes a picture of your hand, and the medical professionals can diagnose from that. But with the fluoroscopy, which is a different type of radiologic imaging, it actually goes from the generator, which sends out the beam, to a screen that is very much like an X-ray film. But in this case, instead of imprinting and then printing a static image, it goes to a monitor. So the important thing for us in this type of thing is when we have things that are moving and we want to know how they relate to one another. So as an example, for a bird's wing, if they have an elbow joint that has been broken and it requires the medical professionals to insert one of those FESA pins inside the hollow wing bones, and yet we want to know if that wing will still move with that pin in place. We can insert the pin, put the animal still under anesthesia, under the fluoroscope, and articulate or move that joint to be sure that the orthopedic pin does not interfere. Or as Randy said, if we are working on, say, a snapping turtle or some other animal where we are trying to reach in using our various types of probes and snatch out a fish hook, as an example, we can use real-time fluoroscopy to see how the probe is proceeding into the animal and identify where it is in proximity to the object we want to remove. And where this is especially important a lot of times is when we're trying to remove lead fragments from the digestive system of bald eagles. One of the most common problems we have in bald eagles is lead poisoning, where they ingest lead fragments after eating the remains of animals left in the field by hunters. And sometimes those fragments are very tiny. But one of the things that happens, and especially in birds like hawks or owls or eagles, is when the lead gets into their system, it immediately goes into the bloodstream and it essentially paralyzes their digestive tract. So instead of passing it through like a mammal might, that lead fragment stays there. And if we don't go in surgically using endoscopy or the articulating or the steerable little probes that we can put down their esophagus or through an incision in the body wall and literally opens up and clutches something to pull out, these animals will die because that toxic object is in their digestive system, continuing to poison them as long as it remains there. So this device is expensive. There's no question about it. But on the other hand, it's irreplaceable in our life-saving work. And part of the thing that we ask our folks to keep in mind is not only are we caring for the 3,500 animals for which we'll provide care this year, but we're teaching veterinary professionals, veterinary students from all over the world how to do the life-saving work that we do. So if one of our veterinary students has the opportunity to work with this technique and remove a fragment of lead from a bald eagle or a red-tailed hawk or any other animal at the Wildlife Center of Virginia, they may return home to another country where the wildlife is far more endangered, far more fragile. And so the opportunity to work with state-of-the-art equipment is critically important to them.
All right, Mr. Clark, let me give you an update on where we are.
Okay.
It's just like election night. Our total for the items on Dr. Kara's wish list was $17,000. Thus far this evening, we have raised enough to pay for the 3 reptile stacks. We've raised enough to pay for the oxygen concentrator to meet that challenge. We've raised enough to get the FESA's braces, those little bars. So we've raised we've raised about $4,700. So what's left is a big chunk of left. Is $12,000 for the fluoroscope. Now, I don't know that we're going to be able to knock that out tonight. But if people could donate $1,000 to help us toward that, if they could donate $100 toward that, if they could donate $10 for that, if you had a silent auction item that you lost and you were planning on spending $66 on it, help us with a special donation of $66 toward this goal. Again, it's item number 50. If you look at that auction list, I think, Ed, if we can give it a couple more minutes to see what else we can do on that, and then we can get into the live auction.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, the bottom line is on a donation like this, 100% of your donation is tax deductible because every single penny we are raising on the auctions tonight through our silent auction, through our live auction, goes directly into the life-saving work of the Wildlife Center of Virginia because all of these items have been donated. So as we look at the items that are there on the list of live auction items, the items that were there, the scores of items that were in our silent auction, every single one of those was donated to the Wildlife Center for the auction, and every penny you spend tonight will go directly to our life-saving and indeed perhaps life-changing work. So, Randy, are we about ready to? It looks as though things have cleared up and we've corrected our technical difficulty. And are we ready to begin?
Knock wood. Yes, I believe we're ready to get going. Now, there's a little bit different. This year's live auction is going to be a little bit different than the ones we've had in the past. If you've come to the Wildlife Center Gala, usually we're all gathered around in the banquet room, in the dining room, and Ed regales us with stories, and we start to take bids, and we start to call out bids from different parts of the room. Who'll bid 1,000? There's 1,000. Who'll bid 1,100? We can't do that tonight because we can't see you. And if you raise your hand with a bid, that won't do it. You have to use the bidding system that we've been using all week and get your bids in that way. So the plan will be that Ed and I will describe these items, give you a quick update on where we are in terms of the bid, and then it's up to you. You're going to have to go back to that auction system and get your bids in. We will try to announce a few minutes, like a minute or two in advance when we're going to close these items to give you fair warning that an item's going to close. But we're not going to be able to say, oh, you've just been outbid. You're going to have to rely on the system for that. So
yeah, so
we'll get through this evening together. We've got some great items to auction off. I think we're ready to go. Again, number 50, the medical wish list, that item stays open throughout the night. So if if you've lost out on item number 3 and you've got an extra $500, you can go to number 50 and make that donation.
Yeah, it's instant gratification for you. So, without further ado, let us launch into our live auction tonight. And as Randy suggested, we're making it up as we go. We have no idea how this is going to go. We're monitoring the bids as you place them online. So we'll try to be as relevant as possible. And item number 1 is a private dumpling making session. And I have no idea in the world what that's about, but Randy does.
Let me tell you, one of the things that one does when one is at home during a pandemic for example, is one watches a lot of the Food Network. And one of the programs that, or one of the people you often see on the Food Network is Guy Fieri, who's on with a variety of programs. Well, we were very excited to see that there was a local person who was on his show, uh, who actually was on last fall, and somebody who is from Charlottesville, somebody who used to be the chef at Dooners. And you've probably been there, Ed.
One of my favorite restaurants.
You eat everywhere. Well, her name is Laura Fauner, and she went on this show on the fall and demonstrated in Guy's grocery games that she really knew how to cook. And then she was brought back for the grilling championship, and I think they had to go through 8 rounds of cooking competition, and she aced it. She was so good. She won every round, and she ultimately won the grand championship. And she just was the nicest person, and well, she was a great representative for our area. So after she won, I contacted her out of the blue. I never met her. I sent her an email and said, "Hey, I watched you on the Food Network. Loved watching you. I know you're in Charlottesville. Any chance you would donate something to the Wildlife Center of Virginia auction?" And she wrote back like 10 minutes later and said, "You bet." So then we decided, what would that be? She came up with dumpling making class. She spent the last 13 years perfecting her recipe for making dumplings. She, in fact, is opening up a food truck. It's called The Dumpling. So dumplings are her thing. She is prepared to come to your home, to work in your kitchen with you and up to 5 guests, to teach you the secret of making the perfect dumpling. You have to provide the kitchen. You have to provide the basic ingredients. She provides the skill and the instruction on how to make the perfect dumpling. Now, we've had to limit this to within 50 miles of Charlottesville. As we say in the auction description online, if you don't live within that 50-mile radius, you might want to think about relocating, because it's worth it.
And we know real estate agents that can help you with that.
We know those people who can help make this happen. So again, it's an in your kitchen dumpling making class. Might be a great present for Mother's Day, might be a great present for New Year's Eve. There will work with you in terms of COVID restrictions to make sure that this happens. The present bid, I think, is $350, which is
$350. And honestly, if you don't have enough friends to get 6 people to your house, I'll volunteer.
The other thing is, if you really want to know the secret of dumpling making, Ed, you might want to not share it with your friends. You might want to just take the class yourself, one-on-one, so that you learn how to make perfect dumplings, and then you can amaze all of your friends.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, who doesn't aspire to being thought of as a dumpling god?
Exactly right. You know, anybody can make a good brownie. How about making a good dumpling? Now, there's something to brag about. So,
and you know, dumplings are full of all kinds of good things. I mean, there's some really outstanding brownies out there, but dumplings.
Totally versatile, a wonderful experience. I think you'll find Laura to be a great person. So I think we need to move on, and we should probably close the bidding on this item in, what do you say, like about a minute? Does that give us enough time?
So that's about as much as we have to say about dumplings. And we will encourage you, if you are interested, to get your bid in promptly. And we are going to move on to item number 2 while you place those bids.
Great. We'll give you a minute on the clock to get in your dumpling item, and let's talk about item number 2.
Well, item number 2 is a spectacular picture of what is an area known well to us here in Virginia as Goshen Pass. Goshen Pass is just a magic area where there's a gap in the Allegheny Mountains through which a fast-moving stream comes, and it's just never lost its wildness, its spectacular natural beauty. And this painting indeed captures it. It's a pure pigment pastel. It's a small painting, so if if you don't have a huge amount of wall space in your home, and I confess I'm in that category, the actual surface of this image is 9 inches by 12 inches, but it is actually done on sandpaper, which gives it deep texture and a very three-dimensional feel. It's also custom framed in a champagne reverse scoop profile, and it is just a lovely, lovely image. The current bid on this is $457, and the bidding has been enthusiastic. And we are looking to increase that. And just a bit of information, and excuse me from not looking at the camera as I look at the description. The property of the Goshen Pass, where the Maury River passes through, it's a 3.7-mile long gorge, the gorge at the Goshen Pass, and it's just been a treasure trove of both natural and historic artifacts. A very, very important route for Native Americans to pass through from the western regions to the Shenandoah Valley. They would come through Goshen Pass and then through Buffalo Gap, which is the next gap over, which led into the Shenandoah Valley. So this area is very significant in the history and the development of the United States and of North America in general, and particularly for Native Americans. But it also today remains truly a tourist destination, but a destination that is not touristy, if I can put it that way. When you go to Goshen Pass, you canoe, you kayak, you picnic, you just walk the banks of the river. It's a very special experience. And no matter what time of the year you visit, it's incredible. Being able to take it home, put it on your wall is even more so. So we are going to invite you, if you are bidding on this, to increase your bid. The current bid is $457. That bid will close in 1 minute from right now, and we're going to move on to item number three.
Item number three. Ed, let me ask you a question before we launch into the description of item number three. Is Kim around at all?
She is. Come here, sweetheart.
I don't want to be on camera.
She doesn't want to be on camera. She is indeed here, but she's wearing sparkly shoes.
Is she prepared to do something?
She's in her jeans and t-shirt, but she's wearing sparkly slippers. So she's dressed up for the evening.
Is she prepared to do some bidding?
I think she has been enthusiastically bidding all evening.
That's right, because I think this next item you might describe as Carolina Blue.
I've tried to tell her, I've tried to get online and I can't get on.
Okay, she's having some technical trouble, but we'll make that work. Carolina Blue, huh?
It's pretty.
It's a sapphire and diamond ring.
That's a stretch to call it.
Well, okay, she actually has been bidding on this item, but there you go.
I've not bid on it, but I've been eyeing it.
So here we are. So this item is indeed not quite Carolina blue, but let's call it a universal blue. This is sapphire blue. And it was actually a great pleasure for me. Let's see, about a week ago, or I guess maybe or even earlier this week, to take this ring to a friend and supporter of the Wildlife Center, Dale Pointer, who is a jewelry wholesaler and appraiser. And he took a look at this ring and he goes, "Wow." He says, "This sapphire is pretty big." And he says, "It's nice. It's got this nice kind of silky look to it, but the diamonds are even better." And so the specifications are there, and he measured and weighed the ring and the diamonds. This is indeed a beautiful ring. Now, currently, it is sized quite small. So it would be ideal for a pinky ring, but if you like this and want to wear it as an evening ring or a cocktail ring, It's a very, very simple.
Ed seems to be frozen at the moment. So while we unfreeze Ed, I wonder if this is a time when we might be able to hear from Lacey, who actually knew the person who donated this ring to the Wildlife Center a couple of years ago. Kayla, can we bring Lacey up to join us?
Hi, everyone.
Lacey, tell us about Sylvia.
Sylvia. I first, I never actually met her in person, but starting right after the rock stars, she was calling quite often. She was one of those folks that was really moved whenever the rock stars were admitted to the Wildlife Center and to the care, making sure that they got a lot of care. She was always very concerned about that. So she would call in and say, you know what, here's $100. Here's $100. She was very generous. And at the end of her conversations, I always remember that she would say, well, Lacey, because this was whenever I was working at the front desk, she would say, well, what animals have come in today? And I would say, well, I just admitted a box turtle that had gotten hit by a car. And she'd say, oh, well, here's $100 for that box turtle. She was always very generous. We talked on the phone all the time. And the thing with Sylvia was that you had to be prepared for a long conversation because she would settle in there. But she was a wonderful woman. A couple of years after I first met her through the phone, after she was first introduced to the Wildlife Center, she started talking a little bit more about her estate planning and how she wanted the Wildlife Center to benefit from that. And she became a part of our Legacy Society, which there's more information online. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me or Ed or Randy. But before she passed away, she wanted to make sure that we did get some of her jewelry. And her husband was Greek. They traveled, a pretty good amount. And so she sent us some of the jewelry that she had picked up along the way. She had really she was a big personality, and her jewelry reminds me of her so much in that. So this was one of those pieces that she donated to us. We still have a couple of those, and they're very special to me. Sylvia was a very special person to me that I learned a lot about her through the years. So this piece means a lot to me personally as part of her legacy. Unfortunately, Sylvia passed away a couple of years ago, and she did keep us in mind at the end. Lovely, lovely lady.
Thank you, Lacey. And it's a lovely ring. And Ed, I think, unless there's anything else that we need to say, you're back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to say about the ring? I think we probably need to close this item up in about a minute.
We're going to close this item in 1 minute. We have a certified appraisal on this ring, and the appraised value of this ring is $1,600. So $1,600. The current bid is $1,000. So if you are interested in this beautiful piece with a beautiful history from a wonderful soul, here's your opportunity. And the bidding on this item will close in 1 minute. And we are going to move on to the next item.
And that would be item number 4, which is bourbon tasting and a tutorial with Ed Clark. Ed, please do tell us about that. Do tell.
Well, funny you should bring that.
Oh, Lord help us.
Speaking of bourbon tasting, actually, I have been a bourbon fan for many, many years, and I decided about 25 or 30 years ago that I needed to drink less, but I was only going to drink the good stuff. Well, the truth is, when I found out how much better the good stuff tasted than the schlock I used to drink, I probably drank more than I ever did, and it cost 4 to 5 times as much. But it's well worth it. I gave up desserts. And the truth is that for folks that enjoy good living. You know, a lot of folks really get into wine and they do wine pairings. And you've got this white wine and that white wine and this rosé and that rosé and that red. And you think whiskey's whiskey. Whiskey is not all the same. And particularly America's own whiskey, bourbon, has become so popular in recent years. It is the fastest growing market in the United States for spirits. And some of the distilleries, including my favorite, the Buffalo Trace Distillery, are investing $1 billion with a B in expansion and aging facilities just to try and keep up with the market for their brands. So this tasting is to give you a tutorial, if you will. It's Bourbon School 101. We will do 3 flights of tasting. And when I say flights, these will be a selection of different bourbons. And I will take you through 3 influences on the taste of bourbon so that you will not only understand how bourbon is made and how the taste is generated, if you will, but how the diversity of taste is also achieved. So the first flight will be a flight that talks about the influence of the barrel, aging. So we will start with bourbon straight out of the still that has no color. It's called White Dog. And that is bourbon that has yet to go into the barrel to age, just to show you the common starting point. And then we will taste in that flight a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 10-year-old bourbon. All the same recipe, all exactly the same liquid when it started. The only difference is how long it has spent in the barrel. You'll be shocked and amazed by the difference in taste, and you will understand why older bourbons cost more money. The next thing we will do is look at recipe, and that is the composition of bourbon. Now, to be bourbon, by law, it has to be 51% corn in the recipe. That's the law. But after that, the mixture of other grains really determines the taste. Now, most bourbon is 85 to 90% corn, and then the other grains make up the remaining 10 to 15%. But those grains can include rye, wheat, or barley, and in some cases, a malted barley, which is the main grain used in Scotch and the whiskeys from the British Isles. The final flight we will do is on finish. So in order to be bourbon, it's got to be 51% corn and then aged in what is called a new oak barrel. And that is a barrel that has never been used for anything else ever before. Now, if you buy Scotch whiskey, those barrels can have been used 3, 4, 5 times. But bourbon all starts off in a brand new barrel. It's charred, the charring matters, but when they come out of the barrel, in order to give it that final little kick, sometimes they are finished in other barrels. So some of the things we may taste that night will be bourbon that is aged in new oak and then finished for 3 to 6 months in maybe a Spanish brandy barrel or a port wine barrel or a toasted oak barrel. And you will see how that finish is polished off. And then I will typically bring along something from my private collection that you just can't buy anymore. And that may be a bourbon that is in excess of 20 years old. And I've got a variety of those. And I buy the good stuff to share with my friends. And anybody who buys this, I promise you, we'll be friends at the end of the evening. So that's what the tasting is all about. I will tell you that the bid on this now is, I'm almost tempted to raise the bid just to stay home because I bring almost this much money in bourbon alone. It's at $650. So if anybody is interested in learning about bourbon and from yours truly, that may be a discount. You may not want to pay so much for that. But trust me, I'm bringing good bourbon. It'll be a fun evening. I bring glasses, I bring the whiskey, I bring the tasting sheets, and all you have to do is provide up to 8 people and a place to have it. And boy, are we going to have some fun.
So this is Bourbon with Ed, and you can learn all about bourbon from Ed. You might also learn about what's going on at the Wildlife Center from Ed. You might also learn a little bit about releasing an eagle from Ed. You might, whatever it is. So this is for up to 8 people. This is within 150 miles of the Wildlife Center of Virginia. Although if you're a little bit beyond that, make him an offer. He might be willing to help you out. And we will see where we are. I think
bidding is actually increasing as we speak, and that's good. So we are now up to $750.
Perfect.
And I will tell you that that is the lowest price I have ever gotten for this.
Oh, Lord.
I will also say that someone who is in the Dave Matthews organization purchased this tasting a number of years ago. It turned out to be quite an evening, but the bid was about 7 times this amount. So I'll tell you the same stories I told Dave Matthews' people.
Wow. All right.
And no extra charge.
Flush with greatness. All right.
So here we are. The bidding is doing what the bidding is doing. It is going up. We're going to leave this one open for 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
From right now. And while you are bidding, we're going to move on to the next item.
Okay. Item number 5 is a private champagne tour at the National Sporting Library and Museum, which is located in Middleburg, which is really in the heart of Virginia's hunt country, horse country. This is a private tour that will be conducted by the executive director of the museum. This is a champagne tour. This is, the museum celebrates angling, horsemanship, shooting, steeplechasing, fox hunting, flat racing, polo. It sounds like a great adventure. It sounds like a great opportunity to get out. Have you ever been to this museum, Ed?
I have not yet, but I certainly know of it and have known some of their past directors actually, and just never managed to get up there. But as a lapsed equestrian, my horse and I both need to spend more time in the field. But the Sporting Museum is very well known because of the incredible array of artwork and just kind of historic information that's available. And especially if anyone is interested in mounted fox hunting or traditional sportsmanship, the traditional hunting and angling features. I mean, it just, when I was a kid, I used to read the angling books that were like Isaac Walton's Angling, Complete Angler, as he called it, written in 1820. And I learned things from Isaac Walton in 1820. He would be so shocked to see the fishing equipment that we use today. I mean, he probably couldn't afford half the stuff we use today. But this is the historical presentation of sporting in America. And a lot of it involves horsemanship, mounted hunting, horse racing. And of course, the Middleburg area is the heart of horse country in Virginia. So not only are you in a beautiful area to take this tour, you'll learn about the things that made this area great. So right now, this bid is quite low, and we'll see if we can bump that up just a little bit. But in any case, it is there. It is an experience that you will greatly enjoy, and I encourage you to consider it. All right, so the bidding on item number 5 will close in about 1 minute. So you have just
1 minute warning, Ed.
1-minute warning has been issued, and we are moving on to the next item on our list. And the next item on our list is something that is fresh in my mind, and that is the opportunity to sponsor an eagle release and come along with me when I release an eagle. Now, we can't always schedule these and predict these very far in advance. Sometimes the birds let us know with some sense of urgency that they're ready to go, that they've passed all their physicals, they're ready to be returned to the wild. But having released an eagle just a few days ago on Tuesday, on Election Day, I can tell you that it's fresh in my mind what an incredible experience this is. Now, the eagle we released, if you go to our social media pages or my Facebook page or any of these other places, you can find video of that release. Now, because of the pandemic, we're not able currently to have large public releases. But if you win this bid, we will make arrangements for you to come and participate in a private release as they are scheduled. Now, the release we did on Tuesday, there were probably maybe I'll say 24 people that were there. We released this particular bird in Portsmouth, Virginia at the Hoffler Creek Wildlife Preserve. And those folks down there have been very, very gracious to us. Very small, probably 150, 200 acre natural area in the city of Portsmouth. But their staff monitors what goes on very closely. And we've released a couple of eagles there now. This particular bird that I released was a small male, probably only weighed about 8 pounds, had about a 6-foot wingspan. And yes, that's a small eagle. And when I released him, he flew off and he was so nonchalant. He looked at the people as he was flying past them as if, oh, hi there, bye-bye, bye-bye, I'm out of here, bye-bye. And it was quite something. And then to our great surprise, the local CBS affiliate, Channel 3, WTVR in Tidewater was there to film the whole thing. Lo and behold, CBS National Network picked up the release. So we've been getting emails from all over the country saying, hey, I saw the release. It was wonderful. You never know what the eagles are going to do. You never know if they're going to fly with great majesty or if they're going to get out of there and take off like their tail is on fire. We had one eagle a few years ago that we had big public release. The eagle took off, looked back over its shoulder, looped around, came back, and then started coming down at the crowd. I'm wondering what's going on. The eagle came down to about 50 feet above the crowd and pooped all over the crowd. You never saw people move as fast in your life, but you never know what's going to happen. But I promise you, you sponsor a release, it's going to be a unique experience, and I guarantee you'll never forget it. So right now, the bid on this is still pretty low for this type of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Bring your kids, bring your grandma, bring whomever you wish to this event. But it will, the thing that I've heard from so many people is it's when you talk about doing something and, oh my goodness, it was a religious experience. Trust me, these eagle releases are spiritual, if not religious experiences. You will never forget seeing a bald eagle return to the wild and the moment when it realizes that it's free and it sets its wings, it sets its eyes forward, and it moves off back into the natural world from which it's come. Pretty rare experience. So here's your opportunity. Get in on that. The bidding has just jumped up. I appreciate that. The bidding is currently on my computer, at least, at $1,000. If you want to increase the bid, we're going to leave the bidding open on this for 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. This is such a special opportunity, and it takes the software a while. We don't want to deny anybody that opportunity. You'll get your picture taken with me, with the eagle. And if we're wearing face masks and have to be socially distanced, that's the way it goes. And if you can't make the first release, we'll keep you on the list until we can coordinate it so you can make it. So this is not a one-off offer. If you sponsor this release, you will get the chance to come with me for an experience that I guarantee will be one of the most special in your lives.
I have been to, I don't know how many Eagle releases with Ed. Every one of them is a special event. It never gets old. Ed told the Richmond Times-Dispatch some years ago that every time he released an Eagle, his heart stopped. And I've got to say, that was an absolutely accurate description. It's a wonderful event. It's a wonderful event to watch these magnificent birds as Ed sets them free and to watch them take off. It's a celebration of the success of the conservation movement and restoring the eagle population in Virginia. It's a celebration of the work of the Wildlife Center of Virginia to get these birds back out into the wild. You don't want to miss this. Join us by sponsoring this. We probably have about a minute left on our clock here, but get your bids in. And we're going to move on to item number 7, Mr. President.
Well, item number 7 is, again, an experience. Being an avid angler myself, and actually having started my conservation career working early on for an organization called Trout Unlimited, which is a national cold water conservation organization. I was a bass fisherman before I started working for Trout Unlimited, and then I got involved in trout fishing and tying flies to create the artificial lure that would entice a native fish to think it was an insect and take it. And trout fishing is kind of a mix of artistry and poetry and music and a little insanity dropped in there. And we are so pleased to be able to offer the item that's in our live auction, because indeed the guide who will be taking you out is a guide who is extremely well known in the Piedmont of Virginia. And the opportunity to spend time in the wild with this particular guide. And you have your choice. You can go to the Rapidan River, the Conway River, or the Rose River. And Chris Hawk will be your guide, is your trout fishing professional. He will teach you what you need to know. If you need equipment, he'll provide the equipment. And we'll see to it that your maybe first experience or maybe your postgraduate experience trout fishing with a professional fishing guide is a wonderful day in the field. All 3 of these rivers, I've spent time on all 3 of them. It's truly magic to see how much of the natural Virginia countryside still remains. And these are in, the Rapidan and the Conway and the Rose River start basically in Rappahannock, Madison, Greene County, Albemarle County. They flow through on their courses, and this is the heart of the Piedmont, and the opportunity to get out and match wits with native trout, pretty special. And so we encourage you to take a look at this. Chris is extremely well known in fishing circles as an expert guide, an expert fisherman, and angler. And you'll learn not only about just how to catch a fish, but how to match the hatch, as hardcore trout fishermen will say, how to notice the insects that are emerging on the stream, which is the main food for trout, how to select a fly pattern that emulates that insect, how to present it so that it, from the fish's point of view, looks like an insect landing on the water, which inspires them to bite. And as I say, it's dramatic, it's poetic, it's special. And this is a wonderful opportunity. And you will now have 1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute to increase your bid on this item.
Okay.
So, moving right along.
Moving right along, number 8 is a 2-night stay in the presidential suite. Mr. President, you may know something about such things.
Well, indeed, I just might, because our dear friends at the Madison Hotel in Harrisonburg, Virginia, have offered this to us. This is the second year in a row we've been able to share this. So the Madison Hotel is in downtown Harrisonburg, very close to James Madison University, walking distance, a few blocks away. They have wonderful restaurants, wonderful bars there in the Madison Hotel, and they are within walking distance of all of the attractions in Harrisonburg. The Joshua Wilton House is a block away, which is a very famous restaurant, a fine dining restaurant. There are bars, there are other things going on. If you happen to have friends, family, children, grandchildren, uh, going to James Madison University and you want to attend a sporting event and can coordinate your stay with that, this space is big enough to have, let me just say, quite a party. It is the penthouse suite and it's multiple rooms, sleeps lots of people. And so if you are able to coordinate your stay with an event at James Madison University, it'll be well worth it, and it'll be a bargain at any price, I promise you. Simply for the hard to come by hotel accommodations in Harrisonburg when James Madison has a big activity. But if you don't care anything about James Madison University and just want to spend some time in the Shenandoah Valley, in the beautiful spring as the mountain laurels are blooming, as the fall colors are coming out in October or November, this is a great place from which to base your trip and to undertake your activities. So we heartily encourage you to take a look at this. Right now, the bidding on this is very low and less than half of the retail value. So we would encourage you to get involved in this. Randy, tell me what you know about Harrisonburg area, since you worked about a block away from this hotel for a long time.
I did work about a block away from where this hotel has been built. It had not been built when I was there. Actually, I had the opportunity to go through the Hotel Madison last year, and we got to visit the presidential suite. It is vast. It's 1,500 square feet. There are multiple bedrooms. There are 3 bathrooms. There's a kitchen. Wonderful views of not only downtown Harrisonburg, but also the surrounding mountains. It's a great opportunity. This would be a great place for a getaway weekend. Again, it's 2 nights, lots of room, downtown Harrisonburg. It's a wonderful new hotel, very nice. And I strongly encourage folks to consider this. And I think we should probably close the bidding on this, Ed, in about a minute. Let's give people a minute to get
Yeah, and what one other thing to consider is if you live in the Shenandoah Valley and you have out of town guests coming and you really don't want them in the house, it might be worth more than $1,000 for you to have a fancy place to put them and not be thought of as a cheapskate.
And it's a presidential suite, for heaven's sake. Who's going to
presidential
turn
suite?
that down?
There you go. So, in any case, we are going to now declare 1 minute, and this item will close. So now let's move on to the next item, item number 9,
which is a picnic catered by Kat Imhoff, who is a new member of our board, a new and wonderful member of our board. And this is a picnic at a private site on Broadhead Mountain in a Broadhead Mountain meadow. I don't know if you've noticed the picture, seen the picture of this. It's a wonderful place. This is a picnic for up to 8 people. It will be catered by Kat and by her husband, Jeep Moore. Good company, good views, good setting, good food. What else can I say about it, Ed?
Well, good doesn't get it. The fact is that Kat Imhoff is a new member of the Wildlife Center's board of directors, but she and I have been friends for we kind of lamented the fact the other day she was just a mere babe when I first met her, but we've been friends for 40 years, and she has had a very, very distinguished career in the conservation community, having served as the director of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, having been on the staff of Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, James Madison's Montpelier, having been the director of the Montana chapter of the Nature Conservancy, where she successfully led a $400 million capital campaign. I think that number is right. And just good folks. Plus, she likes to eat and drink well, as does her husband. And the location for this is pretty special. Obviously the bidding on this has been enthusiastic so far, and a lot of the bidding so far has been with people who know Cat, know the venue, and know the kind of experience they're going to have, but especially people who care a lot about the Wildlife Center of Virginia. So any bidding you do on this item, bear in mind that in addition to your wonderful experience out on the Virginia Piedmont countryside and the mountaintops overlooking the Virginia Piedmont countryside, you'll be greatly helping the life-saving work of the Wildlife Center of Virginia.
Well,
So, what do you think, Randy? One minute?
Let's put a minute on this one, Ed.
All right, we've got.
I think the bidding was at $2,000. Is that where we are on this?
That's what I'm seeing right now on my page. And
right.
now let's go to item number 10, which is
item number 10, Buffalo Trace Bourbon, 66 millionth barrel.
This is the most unique item we have had the opportunity to offer in a very, very long time. Now, as I alluded to earlier, I'm a bourbon enthusiast, let's just say, and have had the great privilege and pleasure of getting to know and become friends with the leadership team at the Buffalo Trace Distillery in Frankfort, Kentucky, which is the largest distillery in the United States and one of the oldest. It's actually, the distillery itself is a National Historic Landmark. And because of our long relationship with Buffalo Trace, people say, oh, well, you know, you like bourbon, so what? Well, when people hear me say, my name is on a brick at the Buffalo Trace Distillery, they think I'm kidding. I'm not. There is a small group called the Friends of the Trace, which is, I'd like to call it a fan club on steroids, where we're really sort of ambassadors for the distillery, people who know and share and promote the joy of America's unique whiskey. But this is the name brand whiskey of the Buffalo Trace Distillery, Buffalo Trace Bourbon, which is a 7-year, averages about a 7-year aging process bourbon, one of the most popular bourbons in the United States. In fact, in Virginia now, it has become so popular. When they can get it, which is very rare, you are limited to only being able to purchase one bottle at a time. It is just that good, that popular, and still quite a reasonably priced bourbon. But a few years ago, well, in 2018, the 6 millionth barrel of this bourbon rolled off the production line and out of the aging warehouse. Actually, it had come off the production line in 2011, came out of the aging warehouse in 2018 and was bottled. And there were about 350 375 milliliter bottles that came from this one barrel of Buffalo Trace bourbon. Now, because it was the 6 millionth barrel, obviously very special, all of those bottles were put into the beautiful display case that you can see on this item photograph. And with each of these bottles, each is hand lettered, hand described, and hand numbered. You will also see an actual piece of a barrel stave from that 6 millionth barrel, and a little booklet that describes the history of the bourbon, of the distillery, and what you've got. The display case itself is quite spectacular, And it's really a glorious item. Now, these items were offered to charities only, donated to charities, and they were offered in 2019. Well, for a variety of reasons, we wanted to include it in our gala last year and were not able to. And so we are offering it in our virtual gala this year. This is one of the last 2 or 3 bottles available nationwide from the primary sale of these items. And right now, our bidding is at $3,000. I am seeing. I'm going to refresh my page.
Right, I think that's right.
But I will tell you that as these bourbon bottles, as these collectors bottles have become more scarce, the price has gone up, and these have brought in some venues well in excess of $5,000. But we have a good bid. We have enthusiastic followers of this, and we are going to leave the bidding on this open for 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. If you are not the winning bidder and wish to become the winning bidder, you have 2 minutes to do so. If you are the winning bidder, you have 2 minutes of angst through which you must wait. But in any case, we thank you for your support, and we are going to move on to item number 11.
We will move on to item number 11, Mr. Clark, which is the Day at the Wildlife Center of Virginia.
Well, the Day at the Wildlife Center of Virginia is, strangely enough, exactly what it says. You and a group of your friends, and Randy, we might 5 guests, so a total of 6 people maximum, will have the opportunity to come and spend a day with our staff at the Wildlife Center. Now, what you do during that day will largely depend on what you want to do during that day. You can become a volunteer for the day and work with our animal care staff, caring for the somewhere around 3,500 animals that we receive every year, at least that we're receiving this year. You could help with the feeding, the cleaning, which is a true experience that you may indeed take home under your fingernails. But the opportunity to watch professionals work with wild animals of up to 200 species effectively, efficiently, competently, confidently, and with often miraculous results for their intervention and care. It's worth a lot. And the people who have done this in the past, sometimes years past, are still talking about it, saying they'll never forget when such and such case came in, because not only are you caring for the animals that were there before you got there, you're there as new patients come in the door. You may be asked to assist with the emergency care of animals coming in the door. And it's a real privilege and a real pleasure to get to see the parts of the facility that are closed to the public, because you will be officially a volunteer for the day. You're not there as an observer, and we're not putting on a show. So when you come to share this experience with us, you become part of the team, part of the family. You may be asked to roll up your sleeves. So the bidding on this at this point on my screen is $3,100. Is that where you guys have it?
That is correct, Mr. Clark. Just one other thing that I might add to your great description. We know, I mean, the center right now is subject to COVID restrictions, and we're not sure how long that's going to last. Don't worry about that. This opportunity to spend a day at the Wildlife Center does not expire in 6 months. It doesn't expire in a year. We'll be flexible. We'll work with you to schedule it at a time that works for you and your guests. It's a great opportunity. I think let's put 2 minutes on the clock on this one, Mr. Clark.
I think that sounds fine. 2 minutes sounds good. And if we actually have a very generous bid there now, but don't let that inhibit you. If you would like to be sure you get the day at the Wildlife Center, you can always double the existing bid.
Exactly.
But the fact is that every single penny spent on investing in this experience will be money spent to save lives and change lives through the Wildlife Center of Virginia.
Let me
So-
move this, Mr. President, to item number 12, and you may see that there is no item number 12. This is your opportunity to refresh your drink, Mr. President, if you'd like.
Good idea.
Good idea. Let me just take a moment here to give us an update, to share an update with you on item number 50, the medical wish list. Remember? We are up to $10,195 of contributions for that. And I am so grateful for everyone who has helped us reach that goal. If you've been shut out on some of the live auction items, if you have some extra money you'd like to share with us, if you want to make a donation that would help us acquire some of this really important medical equipment, please do so. It is item number 50. It's still there. We're still collecting bids. As we get toward the end of the evening here, the next item is item number 13, which is a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle bourbon. It's Lot B. I don't know anything about that. So we will wait for President Clark to come back and talk to us about item number 13.
He's back.
He's back. We just have a couple
But
of
he is not, in fact, drinking Pappy Van Winkle.
He's not.
But,
Talk to us about Pappy Van Winkle.
well,
You know Pappy Van Winkle? Was there such a person? I mean,
there actually was a person, Pappy Van Winkle, and he is the great grandfather of the current generation of Van Winkles. Van Winkle Distillery is based in Kentucky, and they have been producing high quality bourbon for a very, very long time. And for anybody who appreciates bourbon, there's just no name that is more iconic in the bourbon world than Pappy Van Winkle. The original the retail pricing on these things is fairly modest, actually, but you can't find it because the demand for this product is so incredible. Now, Pappy Van Winkle is actually produced at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. I've got the great pleasure and privilege of knowing the current president of Van Winkle Distillery, Julian Van Winkle, and his kids he's got 4 or 5 kids, and several of them are actively involved in the company, and I know them as well. And it is the state of the art as far as bourbon goes. Having a bottle of Pappy on your shelf is a status symbol. But I will also tell you that if you want to taste a really, really good bourbon, now Van Winkle bourbon comes in 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old, and 23-year-old. The 10-year-old is called Old Rip Van Winkle. And indeed, the legendary story of Rip Van Winkle, who fell asleep for 100 years or whatever the story was. I don't even remember the story, to be honest with you. I just spend my time drinking his bourbon. But for those of us who are true connoisseurs of bourbon, the truth is that while the 20 and 23-year-old bourbons are a rare and unique experience, the 12 and 15-year-old are the taste experience. They have not been aged to the point that the robustness of what makes bourbon is gone from them. This is a bottle of Van Winkle, what is called Lot B. Now, B stands for bourbon, not second string. So this is 12-year-old bourbon that is produced and sold nationwide. When you can find a bottle, it's very special. And I just finished a bottle with some friends of mine about 2 months ago. And when I brought it out and shared it with them, they were just floored. They said, oh my God, nobody shares Pappy Van Winkle. They drink that in the comfort of their own home when nobody's around, and then they brag to their friends about how good it is. Well, those of us who are hardcore bourbon drinkers and real connoisseurs know that you bring the good stuff out for your friends. You drink the okay stuff when you're by yourself at home. And this is as good as it gets. Van Winkle bourbon is I don't even know how to describe it, as the pinnacle of name recognition, of quality. It's a wheated bourbon, so even if you're not a hardcore bourbon drinker, and this is one of those bottles of bourbon. It may take you 10 years to finish. You have a drink when it's a special occasion, or you have a something memorable you want to honor. Please don't put Coca-Cola in it. But if you buy it, you can put whatever you want in it. But the bottom line is, there we go. The current bid is $2,100 for this bottle. The secondary market on this can go far higher, which is astonishing in some ways. But for charitable giving, it's an opportunity to support the Wildlife Center and then toast yourself for having done so. So we're going to leave this bid open for one more minute.
One more minute on the bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. All right, one more minute. Mr. Clark, that brings us to item number 14 of the last item of our live auction this evening, and it is the Elvis lamp. This is the only item that I can think of in this sale in which you're actually not buying an item or buying an experience. You are buying this item, the Elvis lamp, for 1 year. Tell us about this tradition. Tell us what it means to the Wildlife Center of Virginia.
Well, in many cultures, there are icons and symbols and religious artifacts that really define a culture. And we truly think that this icon is one that defines our culture. The king will always be the king. Now, since we've had this particular cultural icon in the Wildlife Center's inventory, which has been a long time, 25 years or more, the bid is for custody of this Elvis lamp. And it does have a shade, and it does come with a bulb. And yes, the lamp does work. He is wearing a genuine 100% authentic plastic Hawaiian lei around his neck. And I know that it's genuine, and I know it's authentic because I personally put it around his neck. And to just simply enhance the experience and deepen the religious veracity of this icon. What can you say about Elvis? I mean, yeah, he's dead, but he lives. And this lamp, you can experience it, share it, be motivated by it for up to a year. You can put it in your own personal shrine to the king, or more importantly, you can place it in the home or office of someone you know and love. Now, I will tell you, this particular lamp has been in the office of a former Virginia congressman, former Congressman L.F. Payne. LF it has retired from Congress, now lives in the Charlottesville area. I don't think he's on the call tonight, or I'm sure he would be bidding on it. But it was purchased and placed in his office. It spent a year in the office of the late Nick Arundel, who was a very famous newspaper publisher in Northern Virginia. It has been in my office, which
looks great. It looks really good in your office.
Well, yeah, it looked great. It actually was probably the most attractive thing in my office, but and most recently it was in Amanda's office, and so you can make your own decisions. It has spent a number of years on the bar at the Burketown Gentlemen's Club, which is a very exclusive social club in Burketown, Virginia, and you know you're in Burketown because there's a 4x4 post, and it says Burketown on both sides of the sign. And you go to the nearest dairy barn, which is where the Burketown Gentlemen's Club meets. And I'm a charter member, so I know. And when our donors from the Gentlemen's Club were outbid and we lost custody of Elvis, it was pretty traumatic. So you have the opportunity to join a legacy like that for 1 year from the time well, let me not say 1 year, because it depends on how long it takes you to pick it up, until the week before next year's gala.
Right.
We need to get this back before next year's gala, but that is your privilege and your pleasure. Now, it comes with a white plastic shade, which is shown in the item description.
Right.
It is as I recall, a 3-way bulb. So you can either put the 30, 70, 100 bulb in for mood lighting, or the 50, 100, 150 bulb in for room lighting. But either way you look at it, this lamp is just what it is.
And this year it comes with something new, Mr. President, because it spent the year in Amanda's office. So of course, Amanda has acquired a collection of special holiday attire that she has used throughout the year for Elvis. And she also has created a photo book which illustrates and highlights Elvis' adventures during the time that it was in her office. So from last November to this year. So it gives you a little bit of the backstory of Elvis, what's happened to him most recently. It gives you some holiday decorating ideas to use for Elvis. And I was just looking at that shelf behind you, Ed, and if we moved that elk out of the way there, and that fish thing over there, or maybe it's an eagle thing, I think it would look really good back there. And if you had that, you would be sure to get a 10 rating from Room Raiders. I'm pretty sure that is just the touch you need for that office. Well,
yeah, I mean, and honestly, it would make a man cave. There's no question about it, or a she shed.
Exactly right.
Honestly, Elvis was an icon with the ladies. So I'll leave it to you. We've had a big jump in the bids, and we're going to leave the bidding open for this for, count them, 1 minute.
1 minute. What's the bid now on this one, Ed?
What's that?
What's the bid on Elvis at this point?
At this point, Elvis, the current bid is $1,200. $1,250. It just jumped up. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave it open for 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, because it takes the software a moment or two to process. If you would like to be sure that you get Elvis, you can choose the auto bid selection. Put in $1,500 or $2,000, and if anybody tries to outbid you, you'll automatically bump them and be guaranteed to be at the top. So from right now, we're going to declare 2 minutes.
2 minutes and
on Elvis, and that will be the end of our silent auction.
So Mr. President,
with that
does bring us to the end of the evening. I will remind folks that the tally is still open on item number 50, which is the medical wish list. You still have about a minute or so to get a last minute bid in on the Elvis lamp. This is a great experience, but Mr. President, this brings us toward the end of this virtual event.
It does. And for those of you who are interested in supporting our medical wish list, when you raise the bid, it doesn't mean that you have to donate all of that yourself. You donate what you wish. And if that's $5, $500, $5,000, we want you to know that every penny will go to the items on the list, and those items on the list will save lives. And this year we have received a record number of patients. We hope the future will normalize. We hope that the country will wrest itself free of the pandemic. But the bottom line is, no matter what happens, the Wildlife Center is going to be here. We are going to be providing emergency care for native wildlife that have been injured, orphaned, displaced, or otherwise distressed. Our goal is to return them to the wild, able to function normally in the wild. And in the process of caring for these animals, we're gleaning information that we share with the world. And our ultimate mission is teaching the world to care about and care for wildlife in the environment. Your help, your participation this evening has just made a huge contribution to that. We'd be very, very interested to hear from you, not only tonight, but in the coming days through our various media, social media or website venues, or just send an email message to wildlife@wildlifecenter.org. Let us know what you thought about our effort, our first ever virtual gala. We have no idea how it feels on the other end. We're working hard on this end to be sure that your experience is entertaining, informative, diverse, and yet we remain true to our mission. So I want to thank you on behalf of my colleagues, Randy, who is here with me, and the countless number of colleagues who are behind the scenes pushing buttons and making computers do their thing, and the people caring for wildlife and teaching the public about wildlife and environmental issues, our students, our volunteers, and all who make up the Wildlife Center of Virginia's family. I want to thank you for being with us for the 2020 first ever virtual gala. And we don't know what next year is going to hold, but we hope you'll be back with us again. Randy, any parting words?
One housekeeping detail, you will be hearing from if you were a winning bidder on any of tonight's items, you'll be hearing from the Wildlife Center of Virginia. In fact, most likely you'll be hearing from me by email as we work our way through the list. Usually at the end of the night, Ed, we send everybody across the hall to pick up their items. Well, we can send people across the hall, but they're not going to find any items there. We're going to have to ship these items out. We've got a system in place. Please bear with us and be patient with us. It's going to take a little while for us to sort through all of this. But as Ed said, we are so grateful for everyone who has joined us throughout this week, who's joined us tonight, the people who have bid so generously, in some cases so recklessly, to support the Wildlife Center of Virginia.
Given you don't give until it hurts, you give until it feels good.
Exactly right.
And so if you haven't reached that point yet, just because the auction is closed, you can still participate. So
it is now closed on the Elvis lamp. So our work here is done, Mr. President.
Our work here is done. And again, on behalf of the entire Wildlife Center family and the thousands of animals for which we care, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your bids and your participation. And we bid you a wonderful good night.
Namaste.